We've been talking about this offline for some time, and I think we've addressed this in a couple of episodes. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to the shit show, where we talk about the nitty gritty.
It's not so much of a shit show anymore. It's it's not a well-oiled machine, but it's like welcome to Herding the Cats.
Yeah,
we're gonna go ahead and change the podcast title from Cancel for Maintenance
to Herding Cats.
To Herding Cats, yeah.
Well, for those of you joining us again for the first time, we talk about the non-glamorous life of aircraft maintenance. We throw in some nuggets of information to help you progress in life, and we just more or less give you a comedic relief or some form of relief to prevent mishaps. So, welcome to the Herding Cats show.
Welcome to Herding Cats. That's welcome 6, and I'm MVP.
Yeah. Kind of like the DTM sign off. Remember that?
Oh yeah. You can be. We'll change our call signs. I'll be Fluffy, and you can be Mr. Whiskers.
Hell yeah. So we've been talking about this for some time, especially offline recently. We hear the word toxic a lot, especially when it comes to toxic leadership. It's a term that gets pushed around a lot, and it's more and more common these days. So the word toxic can mean something like it's poisonous, it's detrimental, it's not good for you, right? And when you hear stuff like this, or you hear other people's recollection of how toxic leadership works, it kind of erodes your confidence of whether you're going to be able to find a not so toxic leader / manager in any industry. And you can kind of start analyzing this kind of stuff, or start picking apart whether something is bad before you actually jump into it. And by this, I mean like from the beginning of the interview, before you even take on the job. So a lot of times when you come up to an interview, or you hear that you're going to be scheduled for an interview, the first thing that pops in your mind is, oh my God, I need this freaking job, right? I need to impress. I need to do such a good job where the hiring individual or the selecting official picks me over however many candidates so I can get the job, right? That's like almost guaranteed everybody's mindset.
Yeah, most articles talk about how to spot a potentially hazardous employee during the interview process, or how to identify or weed the fat from weed the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's mostly these articles talk about to speak to employers and how they can get the best candidates and weed out the potentially bad during the interview cycle. How do you, as a potential employee, how do you identify if this is the right place you should work? How do you know it's not a complete dumpster fire and they're selling you a lemon in the interview?
Exactly. So just as much as you hype yourself about being able to impress an employer, so you are the best selection or the best candidate for selection, you're likewise interviewing them to see if this is a good fit for you. This is that one time where you get that two-way conversation going. We're like, okay, so this is what I offer you. What can you offer me? And it's almost like a taboo thing.
I think a lot of interviews are driven that way, right? Most people are afraid to ask questions. Man, I gotta, like Six said, I gotta make a good impression. So let me just answer their questions, and I won't give out any more information. I won't make myself look bad. But I mean, quiz fuck the interviewers, man. You got any questions for us? Yes, in fact, I do. And pull out your note card and fire away.
Yes. And, or they like, a lot of times we'll say, hey, do you have any questions for us? And it's always like some easy bait questions, right? Like, what are your work hours like? What are your, your goals for the company, right? Simple questions that like managers already have predetermined an answer for, or interviewing officials have a predetermined answer, just as much as you, the interviewee, have predetermined answers. Like, tell us about yourself. Well, just start rapping off stuff that for sure. You know for a fact you rehearsed this like however many times.
Right.
And so the notion of having a toxic leadership is very common nowadays, especially because now more and more people are speaking up about it. Hell, there's podcasts galore talking about how much their situation at work is just not ideal. Or a lot of mental health things have come up where, like, especially with COVID, like, how do I deal with myself? How do I handle stressful times, et cetera, et cetera? And we've actually talked about it ourselves. Like, hey, maybe you've tried to improve what you're doing and it's just not working. Maybe the problem is not you. Maybe it's the environment you're in. Maybe it's the people you hang out with. Maybe it's your diet. Who knows? And we've arrived to the point where, like, okay, you've decided to move on. You're looking for other things to do. You've sent out your resume to people, and then you got selected for a job interview. And then now you're kind of...
How do you avoid stepping right back into the same situation you're trying to leave?
Yes. Right. Because a leader can be, or not just a leader, but just a group of leaders, or even the management section of a company can be considered toxic if they inflict some kind of serious and lasting harm on the people who are their direct reports. And particularly to the use of stuff like, say, like harsh working conditions or extreme schedules, or one of those like soft spoken or unspoken, like, do this or you're fired kind of things. And I think you and I have talked about this extensively. Like, it's understood that you're going to work 14-hour days, even though there's nothing written in stone that says you have to, right?
Yeah. And by the way, you're going to punch out before your 12-hour mark so you don't go into double time.
Yes. Right.
But it's one of those situations that if you get caught working not on the clock, you're going to be hung out to dry by HR, and your management's going to go, "Oh, we never told you to do that. You know what the policy states," even though they're the ones that are going, "God help you if I see double time on your time card. And by the way, God help you if all these reports aren't done, which is what you've been using the overtime to do."
Yes. And
so what am I going to get yelled at less for?
Yeah.
The reports aren't done for the next day, or if I get caught working. And really, the lesser ass chewing is the working off the clock, because they're just going to hang you out to dry with HR. That's not our problem. Here, HR, you can have them.
Yes. And how do we know this? Because it's happened to us too.
Because it's been there. I keep thinking, this didn't happen in an interview for me, but I was told, we've mentioned it on here before, but I was told by a manager, "You're always going to be wrong in my eyes, but you can be less wrong." And this was in response to how Six and I handled a situation the night before, jumped through hoops, got the work done, made it happen, made the flight on time, highest testing priority there was, completed, 100% success rate, high fives all around. But because we didn't do it, or we didn't complete the job in the same step-by-step process that our boss would have, they told us, "You're always going to be wrong in our eyes, because we're not them. So we're not going to do it exactly how they would have. So because of that, we're never right. But again, you're always going to be wrong in our eyes, but you can be less wrong," meaning you're never going to 100% do it the way I would have done it, because hindsight's always 20/20. But you can be less wrong. So today you were 50%, but yesterday you were 80%. So you were less wrong yesterday. Oh, okay.
Oh, got you. I got it. Right. It's like being on a treadmill. You're exerting effort. You feel like you're doing something, but you're not going anywhere. Right. You just sweated, but you haven't.
Yeah, you sweated, and guess what? You're still pre-diabetic.
I hate myself. Right. And bad managerial or bad leadership practice like that are also a factor, right? Like, do they harass you? Do they belittle you? Do they say shit like, well, no matter what you do, you're always wrong? Like, okay, so then why am I trying to be right? Like, well, you can be less wrong. That doesn't help. Yeah. Zero is
so then
still...
it goes to the point of turning you into a toxic employee. All right, well, fuck it. I'm not going to try. Why try if I'm always going to be wrong. But you can be less wrong, but wrong nonetheless.
Yes.
So I'm not going to free think for myself anymore. And I'm going to turn to you and go, what do you want to do? And you're going to get upset because you're going to go, why did I hire you if I have to make all the decisions? And you're going to revert them back to their own words. And they're going to go, I never said that. And you're going to go, great, this is fun.
Yes. And again, how do we know this or how do we give the examples? Because it has happened to us specifically. And I'm sure there's other people that are experiencing something very similar. We had some listeners who shared some stuff, and we'll probably do an episode or a bonus on that one as well. But this is not just isolated to us. Sure, we're explaining like, yeah, this is our experiences, but this has been broad across the spectrum. I think this crosses into other industries where, especially when it comes to grocery stores, I don't know what it is about grocery stores, but some of the most terrible management, man. And it's for a grocery store, like, or even a restaurant. I've seen it in restaurants too. Terrible, man. They just run them ragged. And then for what though? But again, like in the terms of this kind of behavior, it can lead to a real drop of efficiency, just as MVP said. Like, if I'm always wrong, if I'm always being belittled, if I'm always being given like a second opinion, which is eventually going to be something that I wasn't initially working towards, then why am I going to freaking do it? Why am I going to go above and beyond? Why am I going to exert any kind of initiative or innovate a new solution when you're just going to shoot it down one way or another? And that might not be visible when you're starting to walk into a new job, right? Especially during an interview, because you're just thinking like, oh, bright new future, new opportunities, better pay, possibly better benefits, possibly new location, all this stuff, right? So you're all jazzed up because you may need that job because that's your only option. Like you're very low on funds, you're very high on debt. You've been jobless for some time, so you'll just take anyone or anything that comes your way that says yes the first time. Sure. And I feel it because we've been there too. And sometimes it's very hard to give the no. And it's very hard to kind of spot that a person's telling you that they're that kind of management, because you're just so excited to be in the spot where the gears could possibly turn in the direction where you're employed again and having funds to take care of whatever it is you need to take care of. But yeah, there is such a thing. They do exist. And you can almost spot this out from the moment they start having the interview with you. It could even very well be like the questions that lead up to the interview, depending on what industry you're in. Sometimes you have to deal with recruiters and whatever screening questions that they have, and they forward you to the next step, or it could just be direct where the hiring manager sees you and asks you those questions directly over the phone or whatever. But you can almost spot it out just by the way they ask questions, if that makes any sort of sense to people. Like,
I guess a little bit, maybe. Do you have an example? I have an example, but I'm not sure if it's exactly what it would be. Like, I've been in an interview where it was the talent acquisition person, and they're like, yeah, you see, you have all this experience, but you're going for a program manager. Do you think it was the way they said it, but it was like, do you really think you have the skill set to do this?
Right.
And maybe it meant like they should have said it, describe your skill sets that would make you, as to why you would be a great candidate for the spot. But the way they said it was like, it's like almost condescending. You're like, maybe I can't. But I've learned in being in management now, I kind of see through that bullshit. So I've been in other interviews where I've had other talent acquisition people question things like that, and I always throw it back to them. I'm like, well, what's your experience?
Yeah.
I have a degree in human resources, such and such. You're like, that's cool. Have you ever worked in aviation? Have you ever worked a flight line, a hangar? No, I've never been around aircraft and other than flying on it to go on vacation or visit family. That's cool. Well, you're questioning people on a job about which you know nothing about other than what it says on a piece of paper. So, maybe you're not the most qualified to conduct this interview either.
Yeah. And that's more or less what I was going with too. It's if it's not the condescending attitude of how they ask the question, it's how much they can cut you off as you're answering. Kind of like they've heard enough and they start gesturing you to move on to another question. This can be this not to be misconstrued of like an interview that's timed, right? Because some interviews are timed where like you have 30 minutes, we have to get through this many questions, and then if we have
and
enough
that to
time,
me is almost toxic in and of itself. Like okay, this is just a cattle shoot, and your employees here are just treated like numbers, right? In and out, in and out, in and out. We got shit to do, you know.
yeah,
And that's not spend time getting to know this candidate or really vet them out and see if they're the best fit. You know, did you say the keywords? No, bye.
yeah,
Oh.
yep.
Yeah, and that of itself is toxic. That to me would be a red flag if they're like, yeah, time's up. Well, we got to move on to the next question. Like, well, I hadn't finished explaining it. Too bad. Next question. You're like, maybe this place isn't for me.
Yep. And then that's a flag too, especially when you're giving the question and they're not at all that interested in what you're having to say. Like they've already had the right answer planted in their head. And they just like you said, they're just looking for the key words.
Yeah, they're reading from a script. Like, well, he didn't say word for word what we had typed on our script. So pass, you know.
And what that tells to me is like, you kind of mentioned it already, is like there's no empathy in them when you say like you're working for them and you have a legitimate complaint or a concern or an idea that might actually help things. If it doesn't fit their keyword search in their internal mechanism, they just shut you out, right? And we said this a bunch of times in episodes, right? Like maybe they've already had a set person that they've painted in their head internally who they want to hear stuff from. So if you're not that person, they just screen you out. But then here you suggest that idea to someone else that's of that similar picture. They hear the idea and it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread, you know? And then that's one way to tell like if the person is just not either not actively listening to you or they have like a predetermined script of how they want you to answer. That's a sign right there as far as the interview is concerned. And another one this is actually something you could ask directly. And there's ways to ask this in a professional way. And we're just going to kind of translate it is like, are you going to be working independently, or is there going to be like some kind of routine check? You know, like how involved are the managers or the leadership in the task, right? Because that can determine if that person's a micromanager or they just like let you go full reign, do whatever the hell you want and not supervise you or check on you once ever, you know? And that can be hit or miss for both, or not hit or miss, but there's levels to this. Like if they leave you unsupervised, that's kind of a good thing because that means, you know, you have room to innovate and stuff like that. At the same time,
and there maybe is some trust in there. They trust that, you know, in the work that you do and that you're going to that you put out, so they can leave you unattended. But by the same token, if there was nothing or no transition period or training leading up to that, and you're like, okay, we hired you, step in, and you're going, wait a minute, can you guys show me where these reports are kept, and can you show me where I should find this, and who do I need to talk to for that? Well, you said you had experience in this, so figure it out. And you're going, yeah, I mean, experience in the overall, let's just say the overall concept of finances. I can run your books for you, but clearly we're in a Fortune 500 company and there's multiple subsidiaries that I need to collect information from. I need to know who to talk to in those areas to get these numbers. You can't just say, well, welcome aboard and good luck.
Yeah.
You know, like that in of itself is toxic, where it's like, so you really expecting me to come in here and know the intricacies of this organization day one? You know?
Yeah.
Because some people do that. They fully expect that when your start date, like you should be there. You should act like you've been there 15 years.
Yes. And that's kind of what I was going, the opposite side of not being supervised, right? Like, yeah, you have room to do what you want, but at the same time, like, do they even give a shit? You know, at that point, it's like, whatever, it's a number. He or she is doing the job. I'll leave it alone and focus on other shit. And then say you have legitimate concerns or things are starting to build up and you're like, where the freak is this manager at? You know? And we've had that happen. We've had we've had numerous stories and experiences of that happening to people. Like they just get put out in whatever section or whatever part of the flight line, and they just get forgotten about. Like, holy shit, you guys work?
They fly under the radar, and everybody's like, "Hey, are you a new guy?" You finally introduce yourself, right? And you're like, "Hey, man, I haven't seen you before." Like, "Hey, welcome aboard," this and that. And you're like, "Oh, I'm not new, man." What do you mean you're not new? No, I've been here 4 years. What? Yeah, they put me out here on day one, and nobody's ever talked to me since. I just come here to this same spot every day and do what I've done. You haven't said anything? I didn't know I could. Like, I was afraid to, you know?
Yes.
And I thought somebody would eventually come back and talk to me, but they never did.
Yeah. Right. We've had that happen to ourselves too. Like we just got put out into the sticks, and like we haven't seen like any person of leadership or situational influence for like months. I'm like, who's in charge? I guess I am. Screw it. Head mech in charge. Whatever, guys. Let's do this. You know. And you just willy nilly things until they have to do like a command check. I think I can't really figure out another way to put it, but they finally come out there to do a survey or some shit, and they start hammering you for all kinds of rules that you were never made aware of. I'm like, what the hell?
I just ran into this last week where I was going in. I'm like, hey, I'm covering a couple of contracts because the person who is supposed to be covering those wasn't doing it. But I have somebody that works there, so I just kind of took it over, and then people saw me taking action, so they assumed like, hey, your contract, you need to do this now. I'm like, wait a minute now. I'm just stepping in here to help my person. Like I'm not actually running this whole thing. And they're like, oh, well, you act like you do. But like I was going in for budgetary increases to help. I was like, I want to get an extra body to help my person, so I'm going to go justify some budget here.
Yeah.
And I got approved for it. But then talking with the chief finance officer over the budget, he's like, yeah, it looks like you have enough statement of work that we can justify this. So, you're approved to go hire an extra body. Fantastic. Awesome. And the guy was like, hey, real quick though, he goes, and this is nothing against you. He goes, you've done a fantastic job with your whole presentation and explanation and backing with numbers and all. He goes, this is above your pay grade. Where is your boss? It's like, well, that's a great question.
Good question.
I don't know, but if you see him, let him know that we got this shit approved. Like
right, and
that kind of shit. Like there, maybe it's a level of trust that I can be left alone to know that I'm going to get stuff done, but also I need some backing at some point too, right? Because there's still levels to it, like you said.
Yes, and I've had something similar from a mechanic level where like I'm stepping in to just augment a site or a flight line for a short period of time, but I was the only one qualified for every system or every plane that was there. And so I'm like cranking away, and there was like, oh, hey, can you help us do this? Can you help us do that? Like, oh, time the hell out. Where's your people at? Like, oh, like they never bothered to certify some of us to do it, or they just send us out here and they'll say, oh, we'll make do until we can get someone else to come out there. I'm like, how long has it been? Right. And I'm cranking away, helping these dudes out, and I'm freaking burning the hell out. Like, holy shit, guys, like you need like a third wheel or something, because this ain't it. I'm only supposed to be here for this particular job, but here I am helping all the rest of you guys. You need to reach back and do something, man. and that kind of goes into the next point about like that management section's vision.
Yeah, and keep that thought real quick. I just wanted to tap on this. So, University of Claremont here in California, they defined, or it's basically what a toxic is considered a toxic leader. A leader can be considered toxic if they inflict serious and lasting harm on subordinates. Now, there's all different facets of that, but I would say, and here's what I'm going through currently, is that the minute you see somebody, a specific individual who's in leadership, and their little circle next to their name on Skype goes green, meaning they've come online, and you hear everybody go, fuck, I think that's how you know you got a toxic leader when just by them coming online, they haven't emailed, they haven't phone called anything yet. Just by seeing their name light up green instills dread in people.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
That is a toxic leader right there. Yes. You know that individual is toxic.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That popped into my head, and I was reading through this article, and I was like, I got to say it.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that kind of transitions to the second one where it's talking about the leader's vision, right? Because you get a lot of people who will claim up the wazoo, like, I am a manager, I am a leader of people, I know how to get shit done. Cool. Absolutely awesome, man. But what helps define what a good manager, good leader, or a good managerial team is if they have the vision for the long run, right? They kind of have an idea of where they're at and they have an idea of where they want to go. And there are times where like you have some individuals who are in a position of influence and they just kind of stay stagnant. They don't want to move. They don't want to innovate. They just say what status quo 100% of the time. And that kind of goes into your, what you were saying earlier about the whole Skype, or that person just came online and everyone's like down in the dumps because they're just going to spool up over the same dumb shit. Right. Or
yeah,
they don't have an idea. They know when they come on, it's just going to be bad news, and it's all bad news that happened in the past. It's not going to be bad news that's going to trend for the future. It's going to suck now, but it's going to eventually work its way level as time progresses. And the reason why I bring this up a lot is because we've had a bunch of leaders who would fight their inputs from their employees. Like, they say, hey, boss, like we have an idea to go do this. It may be a little bit of a budget crunch, or we have ideas to, even if it's just to restructure the layout of the flight line. Fuck, right? Just, we're going to move the toolboxes from here to over here just to kind of give people more access or make things a lot easier and more streamlined. And just because they can't see that future, they shoot it down right off the bat.
Yeah.
And this is something really small I'm talking about. There's obviously bigger ones like strategic impact and stuff, like you failing to predict that we're going to have a part shortage in 5 years means now we're out of a job for the next 10 or some shit like that. You know?
Yeah. Well, how about just impeding an individual's growth and development? You have a team member that comes to you, one of your subordinates comes to you and says, hey, I'm interested in learning this aspect. Or, hey, I'd like to move over to this department. I'd like to change up my career path a little bit and focus on that. And you're met with, what makes you think you can do that job? Or, well, good luck, good luck if you think you can do it. Or this one where like, yeah, not a problem, man. Yeah, you should apply. Definitely apply. I think you'd be a shoo-in for it. And you're like, oh, okay. And you build them up and then you go behind their back and talk to the other hiring manager and cut them off knees. Oh, you don't want to hire them. They're a piece of shit. They're late all the time, just making up stuff, right? Or they just put out shit work and this and that. So that other manager already gets this predetermined, like, oh, fuck that then. I'm not going to interview. Why waste my time?
Yeah. Just so he can keep you in your current spot.
Right. But if he values you as a piece of shit, like, why would you want to keep him too, though, right? Yeah. Maybe he doesn't value you as a piece of shit. But if you value them to the point where you would do that to keep them, why not just say, hey, that's very interesting. Is there anything I can do to keep you here? Is there anything I can do to maybe change up your daily duties, or can I sit you with somebody over here and you can learn about this new avionics package, right? Yeah, yes. You're a hydro guy, but maybe you've shown a little interest in a glass cockpit and you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. Okay, well, hey, we got this mod going on over there. Why don't you go jump in with so-and-so and learn a little bit of that, right?
Yes.
That might be enough. I don't know.
Right. And then that'd be a question too to ask on an interview, right? Like, what are your growth opportunities like? Or what's your metric for performance, right? Like, is it merit based? Is it number of flights or number of flight hours achieved? Is it how
do you measure success?
Yes, that's it. That's what I was trying to go with. Like, how do you measure success? for both the individual that's being hired and then for the team as a whole.
And the team, yep.
You know, because you can have like, oh, as long as the team makes 80% of its flights on time or whatever, or no more than 10% in delays, some wild number like that, right? Or you have to have your paperwork done within 24 hours at 95% accuracy, 100% of the time, some shit like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if they don't know, then that's a sign to you, right? Or if they can't give you a straight, like, clear cut answer, it's either like they're hiding something or they just don't know. Like, because that boss may be brand new into the role. He or she's never interviewed someone before, or he or she is still learning the ropes on their side of the house. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
or maybe they've just given up altogether and they're looking out only for number one. Like, yes, yeah, I hired you and I'm a manager, but I don't want to invest any time or effort into you because all I'm looking out is for me and my next move, you know?
Yes.
I'm not going to waste any time helping you to get to where you want to go because it's going to take time away from me looking to where I want to go.
Yes.
And I'm not going to tell you where I want to go because maybe that's the same place you want to go. And I'm trying to cut competition as much as possible.
Yes. You know, so that brings up a very good point about transparency and honesty, right? If a person's a decent boss, not even just great, just decent, they'll at minimum be like honest with you. They'll communicate with you, and whatever it is that's being flowed through them is being flowed down through you, and then the reasoning behind it, etc., etc. You don't have to explain everything, but at least give enough so like people like are able to formulate the answers for themselves, right? Or leave out the ambiguity without divulging too much info, right? Like it's enough to give them the info, but not leak everything out that's above their pay grade or above their position title, whatever the case may be. And we've seen that happen a whole bunch of times. And you kind of illustrated a very good point just now. Like they don't tell you that they're looking for higher places. They don't tell you like how you're performing. They don't give you solid feedback. Or they turn around and tell other managers or other bosses that you're a piece of shit and they should not even depend on you for anything other than what you're doing now.
Or you're task saturated, right? They're one of those where they keep dropping task bombs on you.
Yes.
Like, all right, add it to the list. And you're trying to work through as much as possible. And like, put something together. Okay, what do you want to see? I don't know yet, but just create some metric. Yes. Any specific type of metric? Like, what's the end goal here? I don't know. Just put something together. Okay, so you put something together, and then you just you send it up for review, and they just critique the hell out of it. And it's just, oh, this is too much, or that's not enough, or why would anybody care about this? And you're going, I don't know. I just pulled as much criteria as I thought would be important from this particular subject and created metrics for it. Remember, I did this with zero input or guidance.
Yes.
I did this with I don't know, just put something together. That was my guidance.
Yeah. And you're flashing me back to all the times when I was a lead mech. And I would have a supervisor, I'll say that exact shit. Like, I want you to do the daily briefing in the morning. I'm like, cool, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know, just brief them about what the hell you're doing. Like, but what are we doing? What are we doing? It's like, I don't know, you're the fucking lead, figure it out. Like, well, I guess.
Well, how about this? I've done this where they're like, hey, you're going to run this meeting. Okay, what am I briefing? It's just the slide deck. Read off the slides. Okay, is there anything in particular I need to be aware of on the slides? No, just it's all updated. Just brief the slides. And then that same individual is the one questioning you more than anybody else in the room during that meeting. What is this? That number doesn't make sense. Who taught you math? Blah, blah, blah. You're going, why are you doing this to me? Like, what have I done to you? You're putting me on blast in front of everybody for a slide deck I haven't seen until now. And I'm presenting data that I don't even know why we're tracking this.
Yes.
I'm just reading numbers and percentages and denominators and numerators and the square root of pi in these metrics, but I don't know why we're tracking any of it. You're just telling me to read it, so I am. And then you're going to question me as to how we got those numbers? What?
Yes. That once again flashes me back to being the lead mechanic. And again, this might be industry specific, but other places do it too. Like you're the lead mechanic and you're supposed to like have like this morning brief where like this is what we've done, this is what we're doing, this is what we want to or we need to pass over to the next shift or whatever the case may be. And it's usually pretty cut and dry. Like it's from a mechanic standpoint, there's not a whole lot you can really dive into. But when you're in this meeting and you're saying, this is what we did, or this is what the prior shift did, this is what we're going to do today, and this is what we need to carry over to next. And then you're getting blasted by the very person who's put you, who's telling you to do this report over everybody else. And we're like, hold the heck on, man. Like, you're the one who told me to be the lead. You're the one who told me to map out the day. You're the one who told me to build this freaking report. And you're blasting me about it in the middle of a meeting? Like, you couldn't just like tell everybody that, you know what, we'll figure it out. You know, just give them a blanket answer so people will stop asking me questions and then you can blast me. But in front of everybody, man, that
is this making you look good by belittling somebody from your own team?
Yes.
In this meeting? Because if I was somebody else in that meeting and be like, look how stupid this person is, I can't believe they are. I'm like, if I was somebody else and I were like, well, you hired him, didn't you? What kind of interviews are you conducting? You know what I mean? If you think that little of your own person.
Yes. There was one listener that mentioned to us, like, you hire for the talent and you train for the knowledge or something like that. Something of that effect. And
right.
That kind of flips the script, right? When you get a person like that, it's like, well, I hired you for the knowledge, not for your talent. I'm like, well, why are we doing this right now? As you just said, like, why? What's the point? And that kind of goes into another point, is the respect for the people, respect for the team, and then fairness of all things. And that's, if there's anything about a toxic leader or a toxic manager or a toxic boss, is that level playing field mentality, or that respect field. Because we've all been there. We've seen this. Everyone has their favorites. Sure. I mean, I got my favorites too, but in relation to everyone on the team, you have to rate you using the same criteria. But time and again, we've seen it where people, they grade on a curve. Like, this is my stellar performer who I want to be the best. He's my number one. And so everyone else, they're doing better than him or her. I'm going to grade them based on that curve, where instead of them doing better than that person, they're doing slightly better, if not slightly worse, just because I want my person to be in the top 5% of the reporting period or wherever the case may be. Yeah, that's kind of pissing me off right now. I'm like, anyone else ever felt that way? I'm sorry. Like, I think I'm really explaining my feelings right now. I'm like, because I've seen it happen way too many times, not just to my personal team, but to everyone else's. And we're sitting there in like these group meetings or in these briefs, and you could just see how defeated some of these guys are because their boss or whatever is cutting them short of whatever it is their potential is, or they're not listening to their input because they already have a set team of golden boys, let's call them, that they listen to, and everyone else just kind of gets pushed to the side unless they get on their knees and suck that dick and become one of their golden boy teams, you know?
Right.
And go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, maybe a better way, when we're talking about asking questions in the interview, like, hey, can I talk to one of the employees?
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, is there any questions for us? Oh, actually, would it be like, I'm applying for a lead structures mechanic. Can I talk to one of your other leads right now? Is that possible? Oh, well, they're all busy or whatever. Okay, well, at least you tried. But they might be like, well, why? Well, I'm applying for that job. I'd like to talk to the person who does it.
Yeah.
And then you can come in, like, they might walk in and go, bitch, run,
Yes.
They might walk in and like, hey, man, like any place, it's got its ups and downs, but we have more ups and downs here. So as long as you've got a great attitude and willing to learn, you'll have no problem,
Yeah. Or you get like a crew chief or something like that, and he'll say like, yeah, man, it's pretty rough, it's hard, but hey, you got a team that'll take care of you. So It'll be stressful. It'll be trying, or kind of like what Stig says in our previous episode with him is like it'll eat at you, but you got a solid team here, so we'll help pick you up when you're feeling down. Oh, solid, right? The job might suck, the pay might be decent, but if the team is fantastic, A plus. Let's do this, right? You feel more comfortable about yourself.
Or they might say, "Hey, man, the boss is a clown, but you don't see him too much. But everybody else in the crew is badass." You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like we all have each other's back and this and that and the other. And don't worry, when the boss comes around, I fucking rodeo clown him. That's what I do. So you ain't got to worry about it, man. And you might be like, okay, well, that's cool. At least I'm with a group of people that have each other's backs and whatever else. And they're being truthful up front, you know?
Yeah. Like, the boss is just a figurehead. He or she is here when they're here, but they know who really runs.
They sign time cards and they go away.
Right. He's like, there was a saying I once heard in when I went to boot camp. It was between my senior instructor and the second in command instructor. Right. The second in command instructor is, I'm the motherfucker who runs this bitch. Right. You have senior instructor daddy over here, but does the president run the state of California? Fuck no, he doesn't. The fucking governor, which is me. I run this bitch. You do what the fuck I say. Fair point. I get it.
Yeah.
You know?
All right.
And you know, it really made my wheels turn. I'm like, wait a minute. Holy shit, he's right. You know? And it kind of goes, and it's kind of the same way, right? Like, you got the CEO of whatever airlines, right? He or she runs the airlines, which is true, but they're not running the day-to-day down in the dirt. It's whoever the boss is or whoever the lead or the crew chief is on the floor. He's the one in charge of your world, you know, or he or she, whatever. And it's like, holy shit, he or she, that person's right. Fuck. Right. So I guess like you were going back to what you were saying, if you have a decent team, whoever your direct supervisor is could be a complete rodeo clown and it wouldn't matter because you got a solid team to help you out. But that only goes so far, right? Because everyone has their burnout point where they're not being backed up, as you mentioned earlier in the episode.
And you know what I like to do in interviews? So like if we're going to interview for an analyst position, right? Mm-hmm. I take one of my analysts with me. I take one of my seniors with me. And we'll sit down and we'll interview and like, any questions, and yes or no or that and the other. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up and leave the room. I'm going to leave my senior here with you. Ask anything you want to know. And I'll tell and I tell my analysts all the time, my team's very open and honest. If there's something I do that's dumb, they'll let me know, like, this is stupid. And make you go, oh yeah, maybe it is. All right, let me rethink this, you know? But ask away. Ask legit questions about the job. You can ask about me, and I fully expect them to give you honest answers, good or bad. And people kind of, their eyes kind of get big. I'm like, just learn. Like, it just gives them an opportunity. They can be themselves, you know, because the person they're left there with isn't the one hiring them at the end of the day. So I like to let them give that one-on-one time. Like, all right, so it's cool, but how much of the job really is bullshit? Man, like 25% of it. Well, is that because of your boss? No, but it's because of the guy above him, or it's because of our program manager, or it's because of, you know, it's because of XYZ reasons. Oh, okay, so at least it's not the guy, you know, we work for. Like, no, he tries to mitigate it as much as possible, or they could go the other way. Oh no, he's the root cause of my headaches, you know?
Yeah.
And that person can at that point go, well, thank you for being honest. And move on from there. And then they can determine if they get an offer and be like, hey, I'm going to respectfully decline this and continue my search. Right.
Yes. And that's a big kudos to you, man, that you do that. And there's not that many that actually do something to that effect, especially when you just leave them alone with a senior member other than a hiring official, because it gives them that opportunity to communicate and really get the down and dirty. The next closest thing to something like that would be some kind of review panel thing like Glassdoor.com or something like that. It's good insight, don't get me wrong. Glassdoor has been a good tool for people who are trying to get interviews or trying to get the climate of a certain organization. whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the problem
Glassdoor,
with
not a sponsor.
yeah, Glassdoor not sponsored. I think the problem though with something like Glassdoor is not so much the system, it's the people who put input into it, right? It's just like dirty data, right? You get a lot of reviews from people who are already disgruntled about a certain place, right? That's kind of like Yelp or other places. They only leave reviews when it's freaking amazing or when it's super shitty. There's no in between, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's kind of the same reason when you tell people when they're taking those company or employee surveys or whatever else,
Yes.
and they give you 1 through 5, 1 being great, 5 being the worst or whatever. And I always tell people it's either 1 or 5. Don't go with that wishy-washy in between because it muddies up the data.
Yes.
If you kind of have negative thoughts on it, hit it with a 1.
Mm-hmm.
If you have great thoughts on it, hit it with a 5, or maybe I got that backwards. But whatever it is, I extreme it on either way when you answer the questions, because that way, same thing like Six said with Glassdoor, people aren't going to give you, like every place, it's got its rough days, but there's this, one upper leadership there at this company appears to have hit rock bottom and showing signs of digging,
Yeah.
or it's, hey, best place I've ever worked. Can't believe how lucky I got to be here, and it's a credit to the leadership or something like that, right? Nobody puts in there like, yeah, it's a mediocre company with mediocre pay. Well, that's like what?
Yeah.
Why'd you waste your time writing that?
That kind of reminds me when I go shopping for myself, right? I sometimes look at the reviews. I look at like the top 5 stars, and I look at the very bottom 1 stars, right? Like, okay, how long ago has this been and shit like that. It's like if I happen to get the one that's broken, how bad is it going to be?
Yeah, how bad is broken?
Right? Yeah, like, oh, broken's like, I don't know, 4 sigma. Like, oh, I can deal with that. That's cool, right? Or everyone, it burns through the battery faster than most. I mean, I can deal. So
yeah, versus it burnt to the ground in my pocket because it spontaneously combusted,
Oh, you remember when vape pens first came out? Like how most of them used to catch on fire.
Remember
like
when those
easy?
Samsung phones were bursting into flames on people randomly? There's a dude on a plane that shit blew up in his pocket.
Yeah, that man, I remember that.
Like, what happened? I don't know. I had it in airplane mode. Yak, 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 yak.
Listen to everybody. Like, don't always put your phone in airplane mode, or just turn it off during flight.
See, everybody, that's what happens when you don't put it in airplane mode.
Yeah, the Eye of Sauron in the aircraft turns on, and it freaking does it black magic to your phone. Yes, 100%. So, as far as questions, you're in the interview. You're sitting next to the hiring official, the boss, the manager, whatever. What sort of questions can you ask, right, to kind of get their wheels turning, put them on the spot? One question you could say or ask is, what are the main qualities you expect from your future employees? Like, well, how do you measure success? Like what MVP said earlier. What would my onboarding training be like? And what kind of timeline am I expected to meet? Because that kind of goes back to MVP's thing again, where like, they just expect you day one to just know what the fuck is up. And that has happened to us as well, where they drop us in and they say, here you go, have fun. I'm like, wait a minute, like, do I got to set up my benefits? Like, how do I get my badge? Where's my laptop? Where's my login? Do I bring my own tools? Which tools can I not use? What the hell? You know?
Right.
Yes. Son of a bitch. Here we go. Or you can also ask the interviewing person like a more involved question or a more open-ended question, like tell me a bit about the team that work under you. Or
yeah, and that kind of ties in with like, hey, can I talk to the person that's already doing this job? Can I speak with one of them?
Yes. And then of course, then you can go into questions about if they actually do bring a team member in. In some interviews nowadays, or at least we'll have a team member there so they can direct those questions to, and they could also direct those answers to us. Like, hey, is this guy full of shit, or is he being legit? Like, oh, this dude's blowing smoke out his ass. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Like, oh, fair enough. Okay, one. Another one you can ask is, what makes you proud of your team? What aspects do you expect them to improve on, or how do you gauge improvement? Do you give them feedback? It's like, oh shit, like, am I the one being interviewed? Fuck, you're interviewing me about my managerial skills now.
Yeah,
and that can kind of be received that way. So just be kind of careful how you word that question. But because some managers, you'll tell right off the bat if this person's toxic, where he starts getting defensive, or he or she starts getting defensive about it. Like, why are you asking me that question? Or I don't feel this question's relevant. Or, I believe in my team, like just give you like short, quick answers just to kind of like, you can already see like their face just kind of scrunch up when you ask that question. Can you tell me a little bit more about the processes set up within the team or this agency or this airlines, whatever? Tell me about the processes. Like if they can fully explain it, or some of the processes just sound kind of shady to you, like,
Now, keep in mind, this is some of these questions kind of depending upon the program you're going to, right?
Yes.
If you're in some realms like I am with classified information, tell me about your processes. Unfortunately, I can't delve too much. I mean, I can try to unclass it as much as possible, but there's some stuff that it's hard. It's hard to explain,
right?
Due to the nature of the program, right?
Right. And then sometimes you got to be a little specific when you say process, right? Like you can't just say, "Tell me about the process of your company." Like, well, what kind, right? You might get an open-ended question back, like, "What kind of process?"
Or I have 65 processes that I audit annually. Which one are you referring to?
Yeah. Or like,
that's an interesting question. Could you tell me a little bit more about the process that's set up within your team? I'm thinking about my own team right now. Like, do you mean that who kind of covers what aspects of the shop, and then who fills in for them when they're out, and what about overtime coverage, and what about, is that what you're,
Yeah. Yes.
It's a pretty open. I would have to get more. If that was being asked to me, I would have to like, I'm going to need you to explain a little bit more in depth of what you're looking for process wise.
Yeah. Or like specify. And then, or you could also ask something like, what are there any expectations of a team member during work and after working hours? Right. That kind of mentions overtime without directly saying it. There's ways you can word this. We're just kind of giving broad examples, but that'd be a very valid question to ask. Like, what are your expectations in and out of work? Like, do you expect me to work 8 hours a day and get the fuck out? Or do you expect me to work 14 hours a day and stay longer if need be?
Yeah. And I like to put it up front there in interviews. I like to put, hey, we do work OT. It's not all the time. Typically we have some guys on the team that like the OT, so they volunteer for it. So it's not like mandatory of you, but we do have a rotating weekend coverage schedule. And, after an initial grace period and your training's complete, you will be thrown on the schedule and you're expected to work that weekend, cover that weekend if there's work. So don't plan anything and be like, well, I didn't know. No, you knew it was coming. Now, if you have other things that come up, because I know we all have lives, like talk with your teammates and see if anybody can cover. I like to promote and my team is really good about this. Like, hey, we got this coverage issue, but we've already got squared away. So-and-so can't do it, so I'm going to cover, and then this other person's going to cover tomorrow. Oh, fantastic. That's what I like. That's what I promote in the team. Like, hey, I don't want, like, we all know there's a ton of problems around here, and I got enough to solve on my own, let alone, like, you guys can do at least the schedule, figure out the schedule coverage. And they do a really good job of it. They only tell me just so I'm in the loop. And I'm like, oh, great.
Right. Or you ever hear this one interview question to you, the interviewee, like, what did you like least about your last employment? Right. And so if you are able to interview or talk to a team member or another employee besides the hiring official, that'd be something you could throw back at them. Like, what do you like best or what do you like the least about this current position or this current team, And that might throw them for a loop as well. And that might be the factor like, okay, I got it. Like the manager's a rodeo clown or the manager's spot on. The team gets through it. The team hates each other, whatever the case may be. That might be a deciding factor. And it may or may not be a question they'll answer in the way you that's going to be the keyword search in your brain. But it's something to present to see if they're prepared to answer that, or if they're just expecting you to just be closed off and not answer any questions other than when can I see you next, right? Or when can I hear back from you? Or say if you can interview a team member as well, like, can you describe what the team's like? Can you tell me what's the spirit, or what's another like what's the team dynamic like? There's so many like we can go through here, and then we should probably just do like a little offshoot episode of just about different like interviewing tips we can do along with resume tips if we really get the interest. But these are just a few of the questions you could ask like during an interview, and they're pretty open-ended enough where you can get enough to gauge whether this is somewhere you want to step into, or you might need to clarify a little bit more with someone else other than the hiring official.
Yeah, I think so. I think just, if you ask them those questions, you're probably going to catch them off guard for one, because it's not super common, at least in my experience, to get asked questions like this.
Right.
So if I heard, I'm like, oh, I might even throw out, oh shit, get a chuckle out of the interviewee, but like, sorry, I wasn't expecting that magnitude of a question. So it's good. Keep the interviewers on their toes, and hey, if you could change one thing about your shop, what would it be?
Oh, throw that in their face, right? Like, what are you expecting to improve? If there's one thing that you can directly affect, what would it be? Oh, shite. Am I in your interview? Am I the one being interviewed? Yeah. Shit.
Boy, I'm gonna have to start thinking of the answer to that.
And then,
in case I ever get asked.
Right? No kidding. I got to start doing that too. And this will be red flags as fuck if a person is toxic or a bad influence, is when they start getting defensive with those answers, or they start deflecting those answers. You know what I mean? Like there's not the deflection, a little bit of deflection I could understand, like, cause it might be some proprietary stuff that they're not allowed to tell you, right? Like classified documents or proprietary company information. Like we can't tell you what goes into these airline parts or something like that because whatever. Or like, but as far as like deflection, if it starts getting real wish-washy, like other than proprietary stuff, or they're just not giving you straight answers, or if they get defensive, that's clear and present. Like, okay, this is probably not the right person I need to be talking to right now.
Right.
But
yeah, I agree.
So just as much as they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. So be prepared to have some stuff you really want to ask. And sometimes they'll tell you outright, like, hey, we're not allowed to disclose this information with you, right? That's something that's being handled by HR or by our legal assistants or security or something like that. I mean,
if you've seen the company in the news recently, hey, I saw you guys are in the news due to some scandal or whatever, right? And you go, so what's up with that? We're like, that's for legal reasons. We're not allowed to discuss that in their room. Our legal counterparts are handling the situation, and as information becomes available, it will be released.
Right? Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Right.
So also be careful. Also be careful asking these questions too. Right? That don't get it over your head to where the person goes, okay, this person's clearly here for drama only, or this person's here just to stir some shit and recommend not hire,
Right. Yes. Because depending on how much you need this job, right, it kind of depends on how direct you want to be with these answers or these questions. But also, like, ask the questions that are relevant to you, right? Like, what's the work schedule like? How flexible you are with a schedule? How set in stone is a schedule? What's the benefits like? Like, you don't have to tell me the exact monetary value, but like, at least tell me, like, is it fully covered? Is it half covered? Is it reimbursed? Whatever, do I have the option to do either or? And some of these might be HR questions, I admit, but if the hiring manager or the hiring official is able to disclose some of this, then by all means, right? Or like, what am I expected to travel? Am I expected to work remotely? Am I going to be by myself on the road half the time, or am I going to be on station at this particular shift? Am I going to be in training for the first 9 months? What, you ask those questions up front, and again, like depending on their answers, is going to flag out like if this person really knows what they're talking about, if they just fire and forget, or if they're the kind that belittles you in front of everybody during a freaking meeting.
You're right. Berates you publicly.
Yeah, publicly. It's happened to us so many times. And some of them, they just, you can go on YouTube right now and you can look at like boss berates people and you'll see all sorts of stuff, either in meetings, outside of meetings, on the sidewalk, all kinds of craziness. I'm like, how is this a thing? And why are they still being employed right now? And I think we did an episode not too long ago about like some of the stupidest messages your boss has sent you, right? Mm-hmm. Or horrible boss actions, like putting a sign that says like you're not allowed to discuss your salary, or you got to give us 6 months notice when you plan to quit. or
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, how is this a thing? How are you a boss? How are you like not in chains right now?
Yeah, like where did you get the qualifications to be in the position you're in?
Right. Yes. But let us know what you think. What sort of stuff would you ask in an interview? What sort of ways to spot out someone who would be a red flag to you during an interview? And then what sort of steps did you take prior to or after an interview that made you say, nah, I'm moving on? Or, yes, I want to be hired by you. Besides the need to have a job, right? And I think that's the majority of the reasons why
desperation, right? We've all done things out of desperation. But let's say you're in a job right now and the pay is well, but you want to leave because for whatever your reasoning is. You have a shit boss, you're uninterested in the current statement of work, or you're just ready for a career change, you know?
Yes.
How are you going to vet out the next place of employment?
Yes. Final thoughts on anything MVP?
No, like I said, not really. I think we kind of covered it all. It's be tactful in your interview responses or your questions. Feel out the interviewer. One thing we didn't touch on was ask about the area. Hey, what's this area like? Especially if you're not from the area.
Oh, yes.
And you're interviewing to move there. Like, what's this area like? I can tell you for the place where Six and I currently live, like, I asked that when I first moved here, and I was lied to. They said, how do you feel about living close to the beach and palm trees? Man, I was young. I said, yeah, that sounds good to me. Turns out those are over an hour and a half away. But like, I've watched other interviews happen now. People are like, what's this area like? And people go, oh my God, it's horrible. And maybe that's not the best thing to say in the interview, but at least it's letting somebody know, like, hey, it's not the nicest area. Okay. It's way better than what it was 10 years ago, but it has its problems, and it's hot, and it's windy, and it's extremes because it's a desert, but it's not a pretty desert. It's like, and so, while it may be uncouth to do that, but at least you were honest about it, because somebody can go, oh, okay, yeah, then I think I'm going to keep looking.
Yes.
And because not everybody wants to live in a desert, not even the people who do now.
Right. And again, yes, reiterating that one, ask the questions that are relevant to you. Be tactful in how you do it, obviously, but ask the questions that you want answered. Don't try to have it answered as you're being employed or onboarding into this new area, because then you might find out like, oh man, I fucked up. But you already burned your bridges, or you already kind of departed ways from your previous employment, and they, for whatever reason, they have a very strict re-entrance criteria, whatever the case may be. I might be talking about military service at this point, but same old same. Like ask the questions that are relevant to you, and then just kind of pay attention to how they answer it too. That probably my biggest wisdom nugget there. But again, tell us what you think. What sort of stuff would you ask? What sort of stuff do you look for? What would make
what have you experienced
yes.
already?
Yes. Let us know on all the socials. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. Send us through email or join our Discord. That's by far the number one way to communicate with us. And it's as little as like $1, which is like less than a bottle of water, to be honest. Get on the Discord. We chat around. We go over some stuff that will help you for whatever your future endeavors may be. There's a lot of stuff, especially our patrons. We're like best of friends. Help each other out, and they share like some stuff that'll help me through my day and vice versa. That's by far the best way to communicate with us. But if it's not that for you, then by all means with the socials or the emails or our website. And then we also have a comic series out on the Tapas app where you can see all these shenanigans in full color, in full pictures, where some of you, it might be a little bit of a gap in understanding. This one will definitely bridge it for you. Like, oh, that's what these guys were talking about. and it's just funny to see this in person. Like, it's like reliving memories for us. I'm like, wow, that really did happen. Holy shit. But by all means, like check us out on whatever, on all our socials. Check us out on the Tapas app for our comic series. Leave us a review, like, subscribe to us, and let us know your feedback. On that note, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you all again next time.
Bye, everybody.
We would like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners. With special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Eric Shaw, Dan Schubert, Ryan Frushauer, Kyle Keir, Mike Sherwood, Caleb Stockhill, and Jennifer Brofer. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. If you like our show, please support us on Patreon. You'll receive awesome perks like access to our private Discord, discounts and early access to our merch, first glimpse of our comics and other projects, and so much more. You can further support us and show off your prowess as an aircraft specialist by visiting our shop at cancelformaintenance.com. If you like classy or rugged watches, visit our affiliate Rockwell Time at rockwelltime.com. Use the code CX, the number 4MX to save 10% off your total order. If you have suggestions for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send us a line on our contact us section at cancelformaintenance.com, and we'll do what we can to get both your ideas and yourself on the show. Please support us on social media like Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Please check out our new comic series on the Tapas app. Like, share, subscribe, and comment on our comics. Let us know what you think. Thank you all so much for your support and listenership, and we will catch you all next time.